Once again, we're back on Saturday, which is nice to be playing on Saturday instead of Friday nights. We're playing a football team that seems to have a renewed spirit and a renewed energy. They're playing hard. They're playing physical. They've had much more success this year than they have the last couple years. I think they've won more league games already this year than they have since they've been in the Mountain West Conference. Every game they played, even the ones they've lost in the conference, have been very, very close. Like last week, they were 4th and 1 inside the 10-yard line and got stopped. On a 4th and 1 player, they would have tied the score to put it into overtime. So they're a team that's coming in here with a lot of enthusiasm and probably a lot of confidence compared to the Hawaii teams we've played in the past. So obviously we're respectful of what they are and how they're playing, and hopefully we can play well enough to have a chance to win the game.
Can you talk about Hawaii history outside of Tommy and June Jones? They've staggered. How tough a job is it out there in terms of recruits, travel, things like that, from all the people you know and the people you talk to?
Well, I'm an outsider looking in. I think that the Hawaii job is a very difficult job unless you can keep most of the homegrown talent at home. Hawaii plays really good high school football, and football is very important on the island. I used to recruit Hawaii when I coached at Oregon State. So the game is very important on the island, and they have a lot of good players. And if you can keep the majority of the players at home, you're going to have a really, really good football team. Now, obviously, you have to recruit off the island a little bit to supplement the talent they have on the island, but when they've been able to keep the players at home, they've had really good football teams.
Can you talk about the unsung hero at San Diego State, the offensive front, and what they've done on behalf of Humphrey?
Well, I don't know if they're unsung or not. Every time somebody asks me, I mention them. I mean, we're very lucky here that we have good running backs, and we might have the best running back in the country on our football team. But nobody would know it unless the big boys up front, which includes the tight ends and fullbacks, if they weren't doing a heck of a job of blocking, as good a running backs as we have, they would not be getting the notoriety that they are getting now. And I think that they relish the job that they have, and they really have fun that they have a good guy behind them carrying the football, too. I think that's fun for offensive linemen and guys that block for them.
What surprised you the most about the offensive front and where they've made the biggest jump?
We started off the season with a couple new starters in there, and not necessarily the starters we thought. Daniel Brunskill, who was our starting tight end for the last 2 years, unselfishly moved to tackle because of an injury. Like a lot of players on our team, they're team guys first, and he's made a big difference. And then we've had a couple other new starters in there at times. Antonio Rosales at one of the guards is a brand new starter, and they did not play real well early on in the season, and now they're playing really well.
How amazed were you the other night at Utah State? I mean, they knew you were going to run, you knew you were going to run, the whole set was raining, the second half you ran almost every play, I think, except for one, and yet you're still able to gain 8, 9, 10 yards of play. I mean, that's not really supposed to happen, I guess, unless you're doing a phenomenal job of blocking like these days.
I think it is all the offensive line. I shouldn't say all the offensive line. As good a running back as DJ is, if he can't get started, you don't know how good he is. So obviously the offensive linemen are allowing him to get started, where he gets to the second level or has a big enough hole that he can accelerate and run by a couple tacklers. When the offensive line plays well, you usually are able to run the ball pretty good. And then we're lucky that we have a really good running back behind him.
Rocky, for Brunskill in particular, how has he graded out as the season's progressed? And something I got a kick out of in that game was the Humphrey run down the left side where Brunskill's running essentially beside him, picking off guys, 40 yards down the field.
I think that's very unusual. I'm glad you saw that. I don't think offensive linemen get much further down the field than 10 yards most of the time, and that's they're blocking somebody at the second level, and then usually if they get the running back to that level, the running back's past them already, so there's no reason to go to try to block anybody else. And you're always taught not to block behind the ball carrier because you don't want to get a penalty if the ball carrier's already in front of you. But I'm glad you saw that. That's a guy that blocked a guy at the line of scrimmage and took off down the field, and because DJ had to make some moves and slow down and start and stop, was able to get back in front of him and picked off 3 more guys. That probably added another 10 or 15 yards to the gain. I'm glad you saw that. That's exciting stuff. That is unusual as some of the things DJ does with the ball. That's just as unusual to see an offensive lineman 50 yards down the field and block 3 more guys. Actually, he blocked 2. He knocked 1 into another guy that knocked him down. Okay? That's just as unusual as some of the things you see DJ do.
So that gets an A+. What, other than that, how's he done?
He's done really well. I think early on it was a struggle to move down in there. It's different down in there than it is at tight end. But obviously he's into it now and he's playing really well.
Rock, you surprised at what's happened in the conference? I mean, Laramie ambushing Boise, Hawaii winning at Air Force Academy, and a couple of other upsets.
I'm not surprised. I think we can all discuss on if it's good, bad, or indifferent for us. But I'm not surprised at all. I think I read now, this was one of Mike's deals, I think I read there's only 5 undefeated teams left in the entire country. Isn't that right? Only 5. And early on the expectation was we were supposed to be one of them, and there's only 5 left now. There's only 5 schools, and so Boise losing to Wyoming. Wyoming's a good football team. That's not a surprise at all. And playing in Laramie is very, very difficult. They've got a good football team, and they're playing at home. That's not surprising they beat Boise. It throws Boise down in the rankings a little bit. That might hurt the league as far as maybe a New Year's Day bowl game. It might hurt the league, but it just shows you how competitive college football is, and it shows you that anybody can beat anybody at any time, depending on the situation. So it's not surprising. I don't know if it helped our league or hurt our league. I have no idea what it did. I think the most surprising thing about our league is 2 teams that were picked to finish last in their divisions are the 2 most improved football teams in this league. Wyoming and Hawaii. They're by far the 2 most improved teams in this league. And they're playing at a fairly high rate where preseason they were picked to be dead last. So I think that's surprising because I don't think anybody saw that coming, but guess what? They are now. Everybody should understand that now.
How far can any team go on 14 yards passing? And I'm not trying to be critical of that because I don't think you needed to throw the ball much more the other night. But as a staff, as a team, I mean, looking down the road here with 4 or 5 games left, I would assume you think you need to get some more out of your passing game than you got the other night.
I think every game determines what you have to do. I mean, we might have to throw for 200 and something yards to win a game. And the teams that run the triple option, the wishbone, they've had a lot of games where they've scored 60 points and only thrown the ball maybe 1 time. So it's not as unusual. It's more unusual now since people are in the spread. It's a lot more unusual now than way back when 50% of the teams in the country were running the wishbone. When 50% of the teams were running the wishbone, there were some games where they'd score 50 points and not throw 1 pass. So it's just unusual in this day and age. That's not unusual in the history of football.
Other questions for Coach?
Yeah, the play of the special teams, Rocky, coverage seemed really, really good the other night.
Kickoff coverage was exceptional. covering the kickoffs were really good.
Yeah. What's the significance of that? What do you see is happening on those coverages?
I think as is good in our case, because this year we're having a lot of changeover on our starters because of a lot of reasons. Suspensions and injuries being most of them, but we're losing people because of injuries, key people. And in a couple suspensions, we've lost some key people. So in order to keep winning, your young players have to develop. And what you're seeing is a lot of guys that don't play very much on those special teams that are developing into better football players. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be better on offense and defense because they're not getting that experience, but they won't go out there and be shy or scared or nervous because they've been in the game. It's been in a live situation where they've run down or they blocked somebody or they tackled somebody. So what it is developing young players, and when they have to go on offense and defense, they have a better chance of performing better because of what they've done on special teams. So it's young guys that are enthusiastic about being out there that are developing skills that make them better at what they're doing.
What's your feeling about philosophically between wanting your kicker just booted out of the end zone so it comes to the 25, or giving your guys a chance to
Philosophy is if he could kick it out of the end zone every single time, you'd be a very happy camper.
Okay.
Because even if you're tackling them inside the 20 or inside the 25, every time a great ball carrier has the ball in his hands, he has a chance to go the distance.
So even though you guys are holding them oftentimes inside the 25,
I'd rather him kick it out of the end zone every time. If he was good enough to kick it out of the end zone every time, we would kick it out of the end zone every time.
yeah. And then the play of the kicking of Barron, as clutch as he's been with field goals, the significance of that.
Well, he got recognized as the Mountain West Conference Special Teams Player of the Week, which is nice for him. It's nice for us. I don't know how important people think that is, but he was one of the best performers on that field Saturday night. You can pick anybody out. DJ had over 200 yards rushing. Guess what? What John Barron did was just as amazing. Not only did he make four without a miss, a couple of them were fairly long, and the weather conditions were ridiculous. So someone to perform at that level at what he does in that kind of condition is really something special. So, I mean, I thought he was one of the best performers on that field last Friday night.
There were a lot of excuses available for a kicker.
And a holder and a snapper. There's all kinds of excuses available, holder, snapper, and kicker. And I thought, and he's done it the last couple of weeks, I think he maintains our momentum. Whenever a defense has somebody driving the ball on them and you can stop them for a field goal, that's kind of a positive. That kind of gives the defense a little pump. And if the guy misses the field goal, it gives the defense a really big pump up. So him making that continues our momentum a little bit, I think.
For a kicker, when were the last time you saw conditions that bad?
I don't know when the last time we've played in bad weather. We've been really lucky. We haven't played in much bad weather, but there's a chance we're going to play in some really bad weather here in a couple weeks. So I don't know when the last time. I don't know.
I mean, you had 9 degrees in Boise.
Yeah, I mean, that's difficult too, but the wind wasn't blowing and it wasn't raining.
Looking at it from TV, it looked like that was almost the hardest period. Some of those kicks he had were among the hardest.
I know 2 of them were when it was driving rain. I'm not sure all 4 were, but 2 of them, it was in a driving rainstorm, yeah.
Was one of the snaps kind of high and Tanner got the ball down?
Yeah, he did a great job of holding too, in the same conditions. I thought the game was well played with the weather the way it was. I mean, it didn't look sloppy at all.
Rocky, the Aztecs, Boise, maybe Western Michigan, and I know this is looking forward. What would it mean to the identity of the program if this program could play on New Year's Day in a bowl game?
I don't think about that. because it doesn't matter unless we get to the point that that happens. So there's no reason to think about it. I have no control over it other than to try to get our team ready to play.
So I can ask that question in 3 weeks.
Hopefully you can ask that question in 3 weeks. I sure hope you can. I don't know how many, I think I read this from Mike too. There's only 5 undefeated teams left, and there's only 10 teams with 1 loss left, right? So guess what? Staying with only 1 loss is very difficult to do too.